Good afternoon to you. 306 News Talk, 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. The great Reagan Reese, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, is here at 3:30. Wade Miller, former U.S. Marine, senior advisor at the Center for Renewing America, joins us at 4 o'clock. We talked to him about the reforms we need at the Department of Veterans Affairs, very much in the news this week. Garrett Ziegler will be with us. You know him as the founder of Marco Polo. He was locking horns with Hunter Biden for some time in a lawsuit. Kind of fascinating. All of a sudden, Hunter's art isn't selling so well. Why is that? Garrett Ziegler will join us with an update there. And then Ginny Gentles is here at 5 o'clock. We talked to her about the prospect of an executive order to abolish the Department of Education, which can't come soon enough. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Today, the United States House of Representatives voting to strongly wag its finger at Congressman Al Green in the form of a censure, a stern reprimand from the House. Democrats gathering in the well of the House to sing "We Shall Overcome," play acting like this is some important moment in civil rights history.
By its adoption of House Resolution 189, the House has resolved that Representative Al Green be censured, that Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and that Representative Al Green be censured with public reading of this resolution by the Speaker. The House had come to order. The House had come to order.
They're children. They are just children who really should be nowhere near the levers of power, and yet they were staging an insurrection today right there in the well of the House. The only thing they lacked were the Viking horns. They didn't have those with them today. Nobody was carrying Nancy Pelosi's lectern around. So there you have the Democrats today staging an insurrection, singing "We Shall Overcome" in a form of civil rights cosplay, pretending that they have any relationship on the good side of the civil rights movement. Their party very famously on the wrong side of the civil rights movement, and yet we had that today. So Al Green censured by the United States House. That is, by the way, precisely what President Trump was hoping to happen. He said earlier today to Fox News Digital that Al Green should be censured. Of course, this all revolves around Al Green's behavior during the joint address to Congress earlier this week, as he was screeching in the middle of the president's address. No one could even hear what he was saying on any of the microphones. They just saw a cranky old man waving his cane around in the air and yelling, looking ridiculous. The House Sergeant-at-Arms escorting him finally from the well of the House. But the president today saying he should be censured in an interview with Fox News Digital. He also said that Al Green, quote, should be forced to pass an IQ test because he is a low IQ individual, and we don't need low IQ individuals in Congress. So there you have it. The official position of the President of the United States is that he does suspect that Al Green is a moron, or at least that he's dull. So an IQ test perhaps in order for Al Green. But in the meantime, while we await the IQ test, he does get the censure. Mike Johnson went over to the Fox News channel, Speaker Johnson, right after all of this, and explained what just happened.
This is a really sad day for our institution. What Representative Al Green did in the midst of the president's speech as our honored guest to the chamber was disrupted. He did it intentionally, as everyone saw. I gave him plenty of warnings, and he refused it. It was a deliberate action. It needed to be met with swift punishment. That's the tradition of this place, to maintain decorum. And so that's what we just did. The resolution passed on the House floor. There were 224 votes in favor of censuring him for that behavior. 198 Democrats voted against it. I can't believe that. 2 votes present. So I think we had 9 Democrats join us in this bipartisan measure that we took, and it was critically important.
Just 9. Just 9 of the Democrats were willing to admit that, yeah, you shouldn't disrupt the president's speech in this way. Out of control, and yes, he deserves a censure.
Bill, because we have to maintain the dignity of this place. We're the greatest deliberative body in the history of the world. There's a deep and rich tradition here, and it is violated. To our understanding and our review of history, that was the first time than any member of Congress has ever had to be removed in the middle of a presidential address, and it's shameful.
Yeah, but it had to be done. But yes, it's shameful. Al Green is a lunatic. As the president points out, it might not be entirely his fault. He's low IQ, but somebody's got to get control of the guy, and keep him from going nuts inside the House. Let's see. Congressman Tim Burchett was approached by Daily Caller reporter Miles Morrell today, who asked him about whether or not a censure is enough. A censure, which is an official reprimand from the House of Representatives. And Tim Burchett said, it actually might be time to expel him. Remember, they kicked out the Republican dude from Nassau County, George Santos, who, remember, because he made up a number of stories about his life. He was like the main character from Catch Me If You Can. It was just constantly making up fantastic stories about his life. They kicked him out. Republicans went along with it, stupidly, because they lost a vote in doing that. And Tim Burchett says, well, maybe we should kick Al Green out. We want to get control of the House again? Why don't we send a message? Maybe it's time to boot Al Green.
Can I get your general comments on the vote to censure Representative Al Green?
Yeah, it won't do anything. He'll stand in the well and become a martyr. And Adam Schiff raised $7 million that weekend. Dadgum, I wish they'd censure me for something if I could raise $1 million out of the deal. But yeah, it probably needed to be done. But I mean, Al, clearly, that was just a stunt. And the Democrat Party, they are morally bankrupt. A little boy has cancer, and you can't clap for that or stand for that. You got a mama up there who lost her husband to an assassin's bullet while he was shielding them and their children.
Corey Comparator.
You can't clap for freed hostages from Gaza. I mean, the Democrat Party has just lost their way.
With that being said, do you think Republicans should take a step further and potentially bring a vote to expel Al Green?
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable consideration, because I think that's we're going to have to do something to combat this craziness that's going on, and at some point we got to restore decorum, and Al just might be that sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, we got to do something. We have to restore decorum, and Al Green, that is, might be that sacrificial lamb. These Democrats, part of the problem is they have no leadership. The House leader for the Democrats is a hapless figure called Hakeem Jeffries, who has his own trouble stringing words together. He operates, he's like a 56K modem. You got to wait for the dial-up on this guy, because every time he's asked a question, he stammers and stutters and can't even figure out a way to talk about any of this stuff. And so he was asked today about the Al Green censure vote by, once again, this time is another Daily Caller News Foundation reporter, Andy Napier, who asked Hakeem Jeffries about all of this. And here's what he had to say. The Al Green censure vote, not much of an answer from Hakeem.
Mr. Leader, what's your message to some of your members that voted to censure Al Green?
This was a vote that people took without...
Well, yeah, that's a good start. It was a vote that people took. Yes, that's an excellent explainer.
This was a vote that people took without,
Get it out.
without any official recommendation from the whip.
The guy he's firing up. Eventually, his connection's going to work. Come on, man. Just give us an answer.
Official recommendation from the whip. And people made a decision based on what they view to be the right thing to do connected to their district.
Okay. That's as clear as mud. I have no idea what you're even trying to say other than people voted today. People voted today. So Hakeem Jeffries, in case you're wondering why they're so rudderless, that's the guy who's in charge. He's the guy in charge of the House. So all this week, we get all these stories that, Democrats are planning on disrupting Trump's speech. Democrat leadership is trying to warn Democrats not to disrupt the speech. And then they show up anyway, and they bring a bunch of auction paddles that they wrote their goofy words on, and then they hold them up, and then you got Al Green acting like a lunatic, waving a cane around. You have Rashida Tlaib with a whiteboard trying to write messages down on the whiteboard and hold them up. They look like we brought an insane asylum out on a field trip. Like, all right, everyone sit here. You get to see the Congress in action. They're like screaming. And it's like, all right, gather everybody back onto the buses after President Trump is done. Let's send him back. Hakeem Jeffries, that's the guy. He's in charge. He has no idea even how to finish a sentence, and he's in charge. So, it couldn't happen to a better group of people. These Democrats and Al Green getting the censure today. And that's a start. We'll see if any sort of energy supports what Tim Burchett's calling for. Let's expel him. If he's just going to disrupt the procedures of the House, if he's going to make the House look like a goofy place, get rid of him. Get rid of him. We'll see if they actually cast a vote to that effect. Donna is calling in from Tennessee. She's on line 1 now. Hello, Donna. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi. Nice to talk to you, Vince. I'm just calling to let you know that I no longer have to make the decision whether to listen to your last hour or to turn the TV on to listen to the 5.
Wow.
I'm always torn between.
How often, Donna, do I win this bout? Is it so when you have to make that decision each day? And I know this is a big risk, me asking this of you, but I just want your honest assessment.
Oh God, don't make me confess, please.
All right, fair. All right, I'll take that. That's fair.
No,
Gutfeld's pretty funny.
Actually, I turn the TV on and then I walk back and forth between the kitchen TV and my computer because I listen to you online. Obviously, I'm not listening to you on a radio since I'm in Tennessee.
I see.
And Tim Burchett is my representative, in fact. I like him very much. He's a riot.
He is a riot. He seems pretty great.
Yes,
So that's very cool.
funny.
Thank you, Donna. And actually, I'm going to use your call as a springboard to answer a question that I keep seeing, which is obviously, what is WMAL going to do to 3 to 6? And ready for the answer? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. The second I do have an answer, if somebody walks in and hands me a piece of paper, here, Vince, announce this, I will dutifully do that. But I don't have a clear answer on that yet. As you can imagine, these things happen in radio occasionally, and this one's a very fast-moving one. Dan Bongino has to go into the government, and by extension, I've got the great privilege now of stepping into 12 to 3 nationwide, which is going to be great. But that does mean that there's a cascading effect that's at play here. But as soon as I or WMAL have a crystal clear answer on what happens next at 3 to 6, you'll be the first to hear it. That'll be exciting to share. But Donna, thank you. I appreciate that call. There's Donna in Tennessee. I've got Andy calling in from Alexandria, Virginia, line 2. Hello, Andy. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, huge fan. I followed you from the morning to afternoon and now the prime slot. Very proud of you, my brother.
I just
Thanks
figure
for the great work you're doing, and couldn't happen to the better guy.
Andy, thank you. You know what I figure is I'm going to do 4 years per administration in a different spot. I did 4 years in the mornings, and then I did 4 years in the afternoons for Biden, and now I'll do a couple of years with President Trump in his second administration. It'll be fun.
Well, you're doing an outstanding job and appreciate it. As Dan would call it, I'm a P1 listener on WM. Whenever I'm in the car, I listen to WM, so much so that my teenage son's like, do we have to listen to this all the time?
I love that. Well, eventually we're going to convert him entirely, and he won't be resisting anymore. We'll beat through that wall.
He was at the inauguration. He also went to the State of the Union, so I think we're getting him there a little bit at a time.
Oh,
He's 14,
I love that.
So.
Did you say? Wait a second.
His mom's in an important position. I'm not going to say where, but I'll just leave it at that.
Wait, but so important that he was in attendance at both of those events?
Something like that. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool. What a cool seat to have. I love that.
Hey, what I want to tell you, though, was, and I think you're probably aware of all this, but I just noticed, I was telling your producer that Hakeem Jeffries, I saw the governor from California. I think a lot of these Dems are going to start to soften their answers, so to speak, because we know Trump's got one term, he's out, right? So I think you'll start to see more and more AOC, all of them, with these softer replies, or maybe not so much venom in their response to questions being asked to them about what's going on with the House and should somebody be censured or whatever the case might be. Because I thought that answer Hakeem had was a pretty non-answer, like you were saying. And again, I think it's for them trying to mind their P's and Q's so they don't sound too radical. Because they want to start in another year or two, they're going to start talking about running for president. And I honestly think he's going to be one. I think AOC is going to be one. A handful of those Democrats, I think you'll see. I'm curious to see. I wonder if you've got. I don't know if you have the list. The 9 people who did vote for censure.
There is a list. It's not in front of me right now, but I will produce it. But on your point about Hakeem Jeffries and sports, he was actually asked about this today. Exactly what you're talking about, because Gavin Newsom told Charlie Kirk today that, hey, I think it's a matter of, this is him speaking, it's a matter of fairness. It's a matter of fairness. We shouldn't,
Right.
really,
All of a
I
sudden,
shouldn't have
right?
boys
All
play
of a
girls
sudden.
sports. Yeah, greasy Gavin Newsom all of a sudden with a Johnny-come-lately position on that subject. And Hakeem Jeffries was asked about it. And Hakeem Jeffries gave as nonsensical an answer as he's ever given on any subject again. So I've got some of that coming up. So, Andy, thank you for helping us tease that. And I appreciate the call and the congratulations, sir.
Hey, Vince, keep up the good work, and look forward to hearing you from 12 to 3. It's a great spot to follow there.
It's coming March 17th, baby. It's on the way. Thank you, Andy.
And I got a suggestion if you're looking. I would look at Lisa Booth filled in one time for Bongino. I think she did a great job.
Lisa Booth is a fantastic human being. I love Lisa. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, she really is. Super gal. Yep.
All right.
Sure.
And Andy, who is very connected, but he can't tell you how. All right, yeah, Gavin Newsom, greasy Governor Gavin Newsom of California, had a chat. They did a podcast together with Charlie Kirk.
It's like you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate
but like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that.
Listening to him is weird. It's different than like staring at him. He's kind of like the left-wing Alex Jones. His voice, right? Yeah, it's a matter of unfairness. Hakeem Jeffries was asked about this today, and his answer was nonsensical.
I want to ask about California Governor Gavin Newsom's comments saying that Democrats were in the wrong for allowing transgender athletes to compete in female and girls sports. What is your response to that after Democrats had opposed the women and girls in sports?
I haven't seen his comments. What Democrats opposed was unleashing sexual predators on girls throughout the United States of America.
What? What was that? Democrats just voted against a bill that would protect girls. And you're saying they're on the side of protecting them. Also, Gavin Newsom was putting men in women's prisons. What is even going on? These people, they're so brazen in their lies. Coming up, Reagan Reese is with us. She just traveled with the Vice President of the United States to the southern border. She'll give us a recap on that important trip. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 3:36, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Wade Miller will be with us. He's a Marine and a senior advisor at the Center for Renewing America. We talked to him about the need to reform the VA to better take care of our veterans, an important story. We'll get to that at 4 o'clock. 4:30, Garrett Ziegler is here with Marco Polo. He's been locking horns for a couple of years with Hunter Biden, who all of a sudden doesn't have the funds to sustain his lawsuit anymore. The art isn't selling, it turns out. And then Ginny Gentles is here at 5 o'clock. We talked to her about education and perhaps President Trump getting rid of the Department of Education. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The Vice President of the United States, JD Vance, went off for a quick border trip yesterday. While he was there, he was asked a question by the Daily Caller's Reagan Reese about getting that border wall built.
How do you and the president define success this term with the border wall, and how much of the southern border wall needs to be walled off before Trump leaves office?
Well, look, I think the president's hope is that by the end of the term, we build the entire border wall. And of course, that's the physical structure of the border wall itself. But we even heard today, there are so many good technological tools, so many great artificial intelligence enabled technologies that allow us, for example, a camera, not a person, but a camera picks up somebody 2 miles away who's about to come across the southern border. Maybe it's livestock, right? Maybe it's a critter in the desert. Maybe it's a human being with a weapon on their back. We're using artificial intelligence to make us better at the job of border enforcement, but we've got to make sure that technology is deployed across the entire American southern border. We're going to do it as much as we can, as broadly as we can, because that's how we're going to protect the American people's security.
So the message from the Vice President, not wall or technology, but wall and technology. Joining us now is that reporter Reagan Reese, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. Reagan, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Vince.
This sounds like a fun trip. Tell me about the trip yesterday with the Vice President.
Yeah, it was awesome. We departed from JBA yesterday, Joint Base Andrews, on Air Force 2 At about 9 a.m., we watched Vance come in on Marine 2. Loaded up on the trip was Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth. JD Vance were all on the same plane. We touched down in Eagle Pass and immediately went into some helicopters to do an aerial tour of the American side of the border, right along the Rio Grande. That's right where the border was. We were in an Army 6 was the title. I forget the exact type of aircraft it was. Vance, Hegseth, and Tulsi were in the same helicopter, a Black Hawk, touring the border. From there, we went to the Eagle Pass Border Patrol Station, which was, once this hub for illegal immigrants. And, I was talking to a local reporter who told me that the mayor of Eagle Pass actually offered him an apartment in Eagle Pass because he had done so much reporting on the city that he said it's very quiet now. It's completely died down. From there, the president or the vice president was scheduled to do a tour of the deportation facility. He hosted a roundtable that Governor Greg Abbott came into town for, Ken Paxton came into town for, as well as the chief of the Border Patrol was there, the mayor of Eagle Pass, and they probably spoke for about 45 minutes. That was closed doors. Vance gave brief remarks at the top and then said, I want to have a private, candid conversation. Press, get out of here, which at that point you just have to respect. And then we did a press conference at Shelby Park, and that is a park that was seized by Abbott where a bunch of illegal immigrants were coming in. They were using the area to come in, and so driving there, we passed a big section of Trump's border wall, and then it quickly turned into this border wall made of old train cars and razor wire. And that is where Greg Abbott was battling the Biden administration to put up the border wall, and where he had to put up his own makeshift border wall, and why he had to take over this park. And that's exactly where Vance answered these questions and answered my question about the border wall, which I think is quite symbolic of what this administration is doing to address the border crisis.
Earlier this week, in his joint address to Congress, President Trump pointed out that we did not need legislation at all to secure the border. What we needed was a new president. Did that topic come up among the officials you were with yesterday?
Yeah, Vance actually referred to that line maybe 2 or 3 times during the trip, and he kept repeating it, and that, got a lot of cheers and claps from the people around the area and in the room. I do think that this trip was rather, I think, celebratory. There was definitely, it was definitely to tout the success that the administration is having so far. But Vance said at one point, Rome wasn't built in a day. And he said, I don't want to get ahead of public announcements that are coming, but, there is more work to be done, and we have more work to work on. And I think the technology aspect of it is probably something we will see more information, more announcements about, because that's something that Vance talked about over and over again throughout the trip. And so I'm curious to see what's going to come from that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking about, the Kamala Harris vice presidency, which thankfully is over. And she was the border czar, and it took many months before she finally went to. She didn't even go to the actual border. She went to facilities that were near the border, and that was June of 2021. And here we have the new vice president who's instantly going to the border to survey it, and for obvious reasons. I mean, obviously the left, they had opened the border, and Trump had closed it. As you were touring there, what kind of interaction were you able to have at all, if at all, with people who have been tasked with securing the border, Border Patrol, for instance? And to what extent are they breathing a sigh of relief about the dramatic change in affairs?
Yeah, I also want to point out that Kamala Harris then didn't go to the border for 3 years, despite being this so-called border czar of the White House. And the next time that she went to the border was when she was conveniently running for president and needed to, make a campaign stop in Arizona to talk about her border policies. So really just the ultimate, contrast between the two. I would say morale was high. I didn't get an opportunity to talk to very many agents, but there was definitely just an excitement. around the entire day, around all the agents who got the opportunity to see JD Vance and tell them about their facilities.
Is it thrilling to ride in a helicopter over the border?
It is, and we flew with the back open too of the aircraft, which was, I've never experienced that at all, and to just watch the military personnel kind of, navigate all of that. I don't know. It's very, very impressive.
That's so cool. Well, I'm glad you got a chance to do that. Any other takeaways from this trip? I mean, you've got the technology side, you've got the commitment to building more border wall. Any other announcements from the vice president?
I think the one interesting thing, the other thing that I asked about was the Mexico tariffs.
Yeah.
And I asked, what does Mexico need to do this time to make the tariffs go away for good? And we just saw today that they were paused again by President Trump. But one thing Vance did say was that they need to see a sustained effort from Mexico to secure the border. And so I think, the 10,000 troops was probably a step in the right direction. I'm sure we're going to get more information exactly what went down today. But for them to go away indefinitely, there needs to be more of a full-fledged commitment from Mexico. And clearly the administration hasn't seen that yet.
And the reason that, as I understand it, that the president said, at least indicated, that he's pausing these tariffs on Mexico is he spoke to the president, Claudia Sheinbaum, and agreed for now that he's going to delay this as, quote, an accommodation. I noticed that the date he's chosen, though, that the tariffs will be implemented, if they are, is April 2nd. That is, as I recall from earlier this week in that joint address to Congress, the very same day that the president said he's launching retaliatory tariffs against every country that has trade barriers imposed against the United States.
Yes, you are correct. And I think Trump also said he didn't want to make it April 1st because he didn't want any confusion about April Fool's Day, which just made me laugh. That's like such a Trump thing. Yes, I would love to get more of an explanation kind of behind what's going to go down and on April 2nd, if that was planned that, hey, I'm going to give you until April 2nd and then it's going to be even more so. Are we going to see the tariffs increase? What is Mexico really going to have to face in terms of retaliatory tariffs, in terms of the tariffs that the Trump president is already implementing on the country? And so I don't know, they better figure out a way to show sustained effort on border security.
And it does seem like auto manufacturers played a big role in a lot of this. He had already basically said, hey, look, we're going to delay by 1 month some of these tariffs for automakers because so many of these parts and assembly plants are actually in Canada and Mexico, and then the vehicles come into the United States. So you've got places like Ford and General Motors and Stellantis. These are these auto manufacturers who have been relying on Canada and Mexico as places to do this kind of manufacturing, begging for an extra month. My guess is as they do that begging, they're also telling the president, we are working right now to move that production into the United States.
Yeah, that's ultimately the goal. I had an interview with Peter Navarro last week, and he, provided some insight that is one of the goals is to bring a lot of manufacturing back to the United States through these tariffs. Another thing that Vance spoke about yesterday was that he said there are companies from all types of industries hitting up the president saying, hey, can you relax these tariffs, trying to work something out. And so the president is not just getting pressure or calls from the automakers. He's getting calls from a lot of industries. But as Vance said, he said they're not going to make exceptions for everybody. And that's kind of not how they're planning to operate.
Yes.
So, but that's something to consider when looking at all this.
It does. I just feel like I keep watching Trump do something to this effect, which is like he's inducing panic among, either it's manufacturers internationally or if he's dealing in foreign policy with enemies, adversaries, like the threats to Hamas, for instance, that we've seen. He will structure deadlines that he says, don't pass this. This is this awful thing's going to happen to you if you do. And then when we get to that point, he'll take a half measure victory, a couple hostages released, which is good, but not all the ones that he wanted, or some sort of commitment from Mexico and Canada to come halfway. We're going to protect the border. We'll do some stuff. We'll try and stop the fentanyl. So he seems to make these big threats and he's achieving not everything that he wants, but he's achieving something. He's making progress in relationships that had previously been, impossible to traverse.
Yeah, definitely. I think I saw a headline after Trump's tariffs, the second round, went into effect on Mexico and Canada on March 4th, that something was like, Trump wasn't bluffing. It might have been Politico. And I have to wonder how many of these countries are kind of waiting out to see if he is bluffing on these things, and then the tariffs actually go into effect, and they're like, "Oh shoot, okay, we gotta put something together," because that seems to be, he's really unpredictable in my opinion, and you really don't know what he's going to do, and I can imagine that's hard to navigate as a world leader.
And if you're a business who's manufacturing goods and trying to sell them in the United States, the one thing you need, especially for access to capital, is predictability. Nobody's giving you a loan if it's that unpredictable. So in order to make all of this work, I think you're going to have some companies who are going to look at this game of chicken and say, I don't care how this ends. I know that the most predictable outcome is if I work in the United States, it's going to be good for me and my product, which I think is the point of all of this in the end. It's really less about these other countries and more about trying to restore American greatness, bringing people back here.
Yeah, it has an underlying tone of national security as well. You bring these countries or these companies back to the United States, that just, I think, strengthens us on the defense front too, and has to put a bunch of other countries on edge because they don't have that to hold over our head. Oh, you have all your production here.
Yeah.
And so that has to force all of these countries' hands a little bit more with these tariffs as well, because they know it puts them in a really vulnerable position, I think, security-wise and also economically.
All right. As always, Reagan Reese, excellent White House reporter for the Daily Caller. Thank you. Great to talk to you today.
Thanks, Spence.
It's for free. So it's both Mexico and Canada. President Trump is putting a pause on goods that the USMCA covers against Mexico and Canada. So a little bit of breathing room for our neighbor countries. The Canadian media has been going wild because apparently on Wednesday when President Trump spoke with Justin Trudeau, he, quote, used profanity. Did you know that? President Trump used profanity, according to a senior government official in Canada who told the Canadian Broadcasting Company News that Trump used profanity more than once while discussing dairy products on Wednesday's call. So President Trump, here's what he's arguing for. He wants more access to Canada's markets. Stop blocking American dairy products. Justin Trudeau was speaking to the press today, and he started crying. Trump has made Trudeau cry in public. Take a listen.
On a personal level, I've made sure that every single day in this office, I put Canadians first, that I have people's backs. And that's why I'm here to tell you all that we got you. Even in the very last days of this government, we will not let Canadians down today and long into the future.
He's getting choked up. He's like, Trump yelled at me. He used a bad word. You see Trudeau earlier this week saying, well, maybe we'll just stop drinking bourbon. I'm like, you can't handle bourbon. You're Justin Trudeau. You can't even sniff a bourbon. There's no chance. No chance, dude. Coming up on the program, not Justin Trudeau, thank God. Wade Miller's going to be here. He's a Marine. He cares about the Department of Veteran Affairs and getting that right. And then we'll talk to Garrett Ziegler from Marco Polo, who's been sued by Hunter Biden, but Hunter's trying to drop the lawsuit now. He says he's ran out of money. Nobody's buying his macaroni art. All of the developments ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.